say. So, for example, in one of our clients, they were building an ally network of men. You could join by signing the pledge as a man at the front end, just by virtue of saying you were really committed, but you couldn't re-up the next year unless a woman told a story about what you'd done in the last quarter as her ally. And it's like, well, that's harder to join the second year. Right, because when you joined the first time, you should have been serious about this, so let's help you do that, right? So this is a tool that we use a lot, and I just want to hit some high points for the way that comes out. When we did some research several years ago, we were thinking respect and candor might be two ends of a spectrum. And what we found in our research, particularly with men, is that when we talk with them about respect, some of the discomfort around the idea of respect was that for many of us as men, we actually view candor as an expression of respect. When you trust someone and it's the iron sharpens iron stuff that oftentimes as men, we're comfortable with, I actually am showing my respect for you by saying straight up what I think about what's going on. So what we found in terms of gender partnership, when men are providing direct feedback, when men aren't afraid of providing corrective feedback because a woman might cry, etc., then that's the point at which respect and candor can really work together to build the kind of ally relationship we're talking about. Humility and courage. I think I'll come at this from the humility side for the guys and the courage side for women. We find in our work that at the front end, or as we lean in as men, the humility is probably a touchstone that we need to be watching very carefully. We find men often at the front end of these engagement moments getting pretty intrigued by what this is. There's a lot of energy. I'm so thankful I'm not getting blamed. I see the business relevance to this. I'm starting to see the outcomes for my work with women. That's the point at which humility is welcome and it really becomes a powerful part of our leadership work. A related dynamic with women that we've noticed, and this is a sobering part of the work where we are right now, is that as men lean in, step up, get on the balls of their feet, saying, here we go, there are women going, oh man, I'm already over the line on cynicism because I haven't experienced a lot of men actually showing up like this. And when we do show up as men as prospective allies, there are women, maybe some of you here today, who are in that place of generally of hopelessness. And it takes courage to admit to the possibility that we as men may show up in a way that will actually turn out to be useful and different than it's been previously. We've had executive women come out of our events and go, okay, I'm contingently open to the possibility that we aren't going to keep having the same damn conversation we've been having for the last 20 years, but y'all are going to have to prove it to me. Great. That's an invitation to high performance. And I'm not in any position as a guy to say to women, you need to kind of get on the recovery plan from cynicism when it's the people who look like me who are producing that response in you. But I can say from a leadership perspective, it's really hard to lead when you're cynical. When you're in a cynical place and you don't believe that good things can happen, it's tough to get great results when that's going on. Courage is useful. I'll finally just mention care and complexity. Care, as it's been said already, is pretty fundamental to this. You actually have to, if you want to lead, you actually have to care about other human beings. So we hear deflections like, well, all lives matter, in response to the formulation of Black Lives Matter. If you say all lives matter, the cartoon bubble outside your head is, I just don't give enough of a shit to actually listen to what you're saying, right? So maybe an unintended consequence, but there's a fundamental aspect of caring that intersected with leadership is such a powerful thing. And honestly, it's not as complicated. I wish it wasn't as complicated as it seems to be for many of us as leaders. Certainly is a way to distinguish ourselves. I wrote recently about the idea of decentering. It's essentially a way of thinking as a leader from maybe multiple normativities of stepping back and encouraging other people and equipping other people to step forward so their voices are heard. In this case, that women get to lead in their own way and that women get credit. So it's a term that comes from social psychology and there's some other meanings to it, but as a leadership skill, it's a pretty powerful way of thinking. We can certainly talk more about that in another way. I'll just mention Liberty Mutual in this regard. They've actually branded their employee networks and as women at Liberty Mutual and allies. So they're very intentional about listening and engaging and asking men to take the lead for the way they're going to be allies with women. The third and final counsel I have is that we as men can influence other men as peers and allies. We did a study several years ago called the White Men's Leadership Study. And we looked at the premise, I know this is going to shock you as a hypothesis, is that we as white men would view the way we integrate diversity and inclusion into the way we lead, that we would view it as stronger than the way women and people of color would view the way we did it. I know it's a shocking hypothesis. Well, what came out of it in a measured way, and I'd be glad to send you an executive summary if you'd like to see it, is what we call the effectiveness gap. And the effectiveness gap is the difference between how I see myself leading through diversity and inclusion as a white guy and how people who aren't white guys see me doing so. And in some cases, with specific leadership competencies like includes diverse voices in decision making, the gap between how we as white men saw ourselves doing that, 79% in an aggregate of about 700 leaders from 8 companies, 39% for women and people of color. And these were really well-practiced companies in diversity and inclusion with a 40-point gap in includes diverse voices in decision making. I won't tell you all the stories about what the guys did with that, but the main thing they did was deflect like mad at the start and go, well, that's the aggregate, or that's the aggregate in our company, but I bet if you ran those numbers with my people, I'd show up better. So we ran the numbers with their people, not so much. So things like the effectiveness gap open the door to these last insights. We have the chance to listen to and come alongside one another. We don't always do that. One of the reasons we don't have a lot of men's ERGs is because one reason we really want to get together is to watch a game and drink beer. And if we got together to watch a game and drink beer like we do, we probably wouldn't talk about any of the stuff that you should talk about on an ERG. We have other ways to come alongside one another, and today's an example of that. I want to encourage you to find your courage and to lean in and speak and learn. One of these, to be honest, is the expectation. One of the new things here is this peer power idea. As men on the leading side of the spectrum, we have the opportunity to speak into words of encouragement and words of correction with other men. And one of the things that decreases the burden of gender for women is when we as men start picking it up and saying, we're not just going to say something when you're in the room, we're going to say something when you're not in the room. This is true, by the way, when it comes to race. When we as white people step up and are part of the encouragement to learn and the correction when things need to be said, then that's part of our responsibility and accountability. And we have those choices to make. And then finally, it's focusing on behavior, like I've tried to do with these 3 ideas. PwC, as has been mentioned several times, has really taken quite a forthright approach to engaging white male partners in particular over several years. And it's always come down to a really practical way of thinking. Let me close. These are sort of another way of saying my 3 points. The idea of emotional intelligence, a connection to colleagues and friends, and a willingness and a commitment to influencing other men. One opportunity coming up, and there are some flyers on the table in a couple of months, is the forum not too different than this, place to talk about trust and reciprocity that Charles Schwab is convening with us here in San Francisco. Get information online. There are some flyers on your table. And I'll just say in closing that the willingness to explore what this means to us individually and the way that comes out in our leadership behavior is an invitation to every single one of us. And when we as men accept that invitation and start showing up with each other and with our women colleagues and direct reports and women we report to and our women customers and the like, we'll start seeing a whole new story. And as we share those stories with each other, that decreases the cost of Rayona's question about the way that men's culture guards the boundaries, because it starts to redefine what leadership and how gender works together, and the price starts to go down when we're all in this together and we're leading in our own sphere of influence. Thank you so much.